You were probably expecting Louise H. Reed, or definitely a woman, not this voice and not this face. But as you may or may not know, I am Louise's other half partner, and I have done something ridiculous. I have hijacked her show today. In other words, I've got the keys of the car. And on this drive, I've picked up one of the most fascinating people that you will ever meet. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this gentleman. This man lives in the United States. He has this incredible TED Talk that, makes one think about a conversation or a story that is the most important story that you need to actually talk about and say. We'll let him get into that a little later. He is an absolute genius with over 20 years experience in the tech field. We'll let him talk about that. He's also so brilliant enough that he's going to have his own show to share his brilliance with the entire global platform. So boom, drop the mic on that. So who wouldn't want to take the keys of the car and take somebody in for a drive and share them with the world? Everyone, I want to introduce you to the soon-to-be world famous Doug Thompson. Doug, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jay, thanks. And I hope Louise doesn't find out where I live and come back and haunt us for this. But, and you got to watch out for those hitchhikers you pick up along the road.
Well, yeah. Well, with today's modern technology, everything has a GPS now, right? So we'll be able to figure out what is going on. And before we dive into this, I just want to quickly say, I know Louise informs all her listenership that she does notes and quotes for the show, and there'll be notes and quotes from this bad boy. So be sure to subscribe to her email list, and she'll send all that great stuff to you. I mean, who would want to miss out on this conversation? So I dabble in the schematics of everything that has to be said. Let's talk about you, Doug. How's it going?
It's going well. Pardon my I'm having a little trouble with my ears right now. On top of having a tooth crack that I had to have pulled out last week, I've got swimmer's ear, and I haven't been into the pool in months.
Oh my gosh! What did they do?
2020 is trying to strike again and go out with a bang, I think. But I'm doing well, thank you very much. And after that introduction, I thought about just leaving before I messed it all up.
How can you mess up perfection? Come on now. Well, don't answer that. Don't answer that, because we all have an ability to do that. So Doug, I know I'm going to do some of the things that Louise always does in her show, and then it's going to be you and me doing the Jay and Doug thing. So one thing is really important, and one thing I do love about Louise's show is, for her, it's super important about getting real about something. And it's those real, true conversations are what can catapult so many things in a positive direction. And I guess my question to you is what is the one thing you would want everyone to get real about?
Be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. That's the biggest thing that I've learned. I mean, as a matter of fact, there was a post on LinkedIn this morning I was commenting about. It was, I think, Heather Monahan, I think, was on, and she talked about she was trying to be somebody else, trying to have vanilla post and these other things that came up. And it sort of reminded me of an analogy. It's a lot like wearing masks during this COVID type thing. It's designed to sort of protect everybody else from you. And that's what you're being. When you're trying to be somebody else, or you're not being your true self, you've got a mask on. And it's not doing anybody any good, because I didn't tell her this, but it would come out wrong. But I'm a virus I want people to catch. So I'm going to go maskless here. I'm going to, it's a bit.
Right. Yeah.
But the analogy is be yourself, because I've found that when I am, one is easier to do. It's a lot less stressful. And I get in this time warp. When I'm in doing a talk with somebody or having a discussion with a customer, and we're in that zone and we're all being ourselves, and it's gone. It's sort of like the conversation we had on your episode of the upcoming TED Talk. Not TED Talk. Well, maybe you will have a TED Talk, but the podcast.
You know, that is a true Freudian slip, because I will say this: for over 2 years now, I've been hounded to do a TED Talk, and I'm not afraid. That's not it, because I do speaking for a living and what have you. That's not the issue. There's always been something up. Like, it's just something is in the calendar that I'm just not able to attend. And it's not that I'm avoiding it, but I think it's that alarm bell, or not alarm bell. I think it's more of that annoying phone that keeps ringing all the time during dinner, and you try to ignore it because you know it's some telemarketer crap. But eventually I'm going to have to pick up the phone. So you're right. It probably will happen sometime, but back to you.
You know what it is I think it's a little bit of the things that you've got on the calendar that conflict with it. The things that you're passionate about, getting back to being yourself and stuff on that. They're the things, you know, that give you energy. And I'm not sure you're convinced that the TED Talk will give you that same amount of energy or do the other stuff on it. So it takes sort of a secondary importance, right? I mean, I think that's really for me, that's what it boiled down to for a long time. And I finally said, look, I got to put it on my bucket list. This is something that any accomplished speaker should have. And it's something that I want to have. And, you know, I went in and I approached this like a sale on this. Okay. And I mean, if you want to get into it, we can.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear. Because you answered the question about real, and I live my life zero script. It's got me into trouble sometimes, but I'm telling you, it's just structure is great, and structure truly has its purpose. But to be confined into something, you really need, like, I'm a person, it's not black, it's not white, it's gray. And took me a long time to realize that. But anyways, to your point, yes, this is where the car is driving. Let's go.
Okay. Well, I put that on my bucket list of things to do, and I'm a sales guy. I'm a sales nerd. As you mentioned, y'all been in the tech industry for over 20 more decades than some people listening may have been alive. But, you know, this was back when we had tin cans and wire and string almost. I've been almost that long. But I said, look, I need to go do this. And I put it on the list. And so I did a little recon about it. I'd applied to a couple of the bigger events, you know, the well-known things and all that. And you know, it got rejected. Okay, that's fine. So I said, okay, look, if I'm doing this strategically, let me pick a smaller one one that's close by, one that I can sort of go in, that I'm not competing against, you know, the Elon Musk or whoever is going to be doing that, you know, a name brand. I'm going to be competing against a much smaller pool of candidates. Not that they're any less qualified,
no,
but, you know, the chance of not having that name recognition, you know, 2 years from now, they'll be calling the Doug Thompson all over the place. But that's neither here nor there.
I see. I predicted it. Now you're embracing it. See, this is the future.
I am trying to manifest your wise words and your vision with that.
There's this thing that people say that if you throw it out into the universe, it's going to happen, right? And I kind of am on board with this, in the sense that if you don't, it's kind of like, I tell why four, as you know, and other people out there, because Louise talks about it. We have 4 boys, all teenagers, okay? And we have told them, it's like, if you don't ask a question, you're never going to figure out the answer, or you might figure it out, but you may not know the full answer. So there's never a stupid question. Always ask a question. So if you don't say to yourself, I'm going to be this, and you say it out loud, it may never come to fruition, because there's something to be said when you verbally say it. All your senses, your ears hear it, right? If you write it down, you're visually seeing it, right? So anyways, I'm with you. It's out there.
Right. I mean, so I tossed that. So I went to a small one, as this community college. I went to it the year before. I went to the first one that they had, and I said, hey, do you need speakers? Because it wasn't quite well published. It wasn't clear that they'd already gotten the speakers for this year. I said, you know, I've done some talks. I said, well, we're full for this year, but you can, you know, come and attend. So I attended, you know, getting a little intel, sort of gauging the speakers that were there, sizing up the, you know, what would be the competition and all. But I found out the organizer, I was very, you know, and I was impressed with the event. They put it together. It was a nice event, some good speakers. There wasn't anything that I was scared of to go up and compete with that for a spot. But I stayed in touch with him, said, hey, I'd really like an opportunity to be at your next one when you have it. And so I stayed in touch with him over the next year. The call for speakers came out, and I submitted my name and said, hey, look, thanks for letting me know. And I put together, now I had to come up together the proposal, what I was actually going to talk about. So I'm coming up on the deadline of that. Here, you're going to apply to be a TED. Here's your opportunity, and you don't have that one thing, the core thing of what you're going to talk about. You want to talk about something, but narrowing it down to the one. And as I'm approaching the deadline, I hear this voice, like you talked about putting out there, the voice inside of me, the inner bully inside of me saying, wait, you got nothing to talk about this year. So I kept having this self-talk, this dialogue with this idiot. I call him Simon, but he's my inner bully that we have this dialogue all the time. And it's like, just shut up, go back in your cave. I can do this. And then it dawned on me, I'm not the only one that has this conversation. I talk to a lot of different people, and they to a person. Now their inner bully's got a different name, different manifestation, but they all have that. We all have that. And it's our self-conscious trying to sort of protect us. But anyway, I that's what I wrote. That's what I did a whole TED talk about. So I did the initial thing. The initial script I had to do, basically I had to do about what the whole talk would be. I had to video it. So I'm writing it all out. It was 35 minutes on the first draft. So then I have to sort of, trim it down because they're 10 to 12 minutes on this particular. And I got it down to about 15. I said, look, I'll edit it first. But it was enough to give them an idea of what the talk would be about and all that. And I got selected. So then it dawned on me, holy crap, I got to do this.
It's like they picked my name. Like, yeah. like you do it like a sidebar joke, like you're out having a cup of cocktails with some friends and you're like, they're never going to do it. You toss it in and you get that phone call. You're in. You're like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. So the realization came in. So I immediately got to work sort of trimming it down a little bit further, and I find that removing, because when I tell a story, I like to add a lot of texture and color, and it's almost, if you were blind, you could see the picture that I was painting with that, but that doesn't necessarily fit in the TED context.
Right.
So I'm having to sharpen and use some skills of brevity, which I don't typically do. How do I pull parts out that don't disconnect the story? And that was the biggest challenge I had, getting the time down. And conversely, because I don't want to scare you off from doing that, but conversely, this was uncomfortable for me because now I'm not able to do what I normally do with the connecting points. To me, because I knew what the entire story was, it was a bit disjointed. But as you look at it, they did logically sort of connect the dots, but it was hard for me. It was different. And for whatever reason, that 6-foot circle, I've been talking for 20 years. I talk to people all the time that get, I'm scared to speak in public. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten what fear was like. But the thought of me getting in this 6-foot circle, now the fear was there. And the bully he'd been going to the gym, and he was, we were going to have some throwdowns.
Oh my gosh. Well, there is so much truth to when you're talking about that inner voice. Like, I call mine is Junior. Louise's calls hers Sally. But I think when we actually give that child a name, it empowers us. Mm-hmm. And for me, I don't put Junior on a timeout. I basically say to him, when you're ready to talk to me like an adult, when you're ready to be respectful and just not so flippin' whiny, come and talk to me then, because I don't want to hear from you until you can be respectful. And I've said this to people, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, is we say some pretty horrific things to ourselves. And then you turn around and you're like, would you say that to your best friend? Would you say that to the person you love the most? And their answer is always no. And I'm like, then why in the heck would you ever say that to yourself?
Yeah. Well, we've been doing it for so long, I think. And that's sort of negativity, unfortunately, from the studies I've done, is sort of the natural state of the mind if you let it run its course. And but you're right. And I think what you're doing in that case by talking to it like that, you've acknowledged that, okay, is there something that I should be concerned about? And then you're putting your subconscious to work to say, okay, look, unless you can give me a good reason, what's the backing of this, then it's not true. So, I mean, to sort of distill it down, but I like your analogy of using that when you're ready to talk like an adult, telling yourself, if you've got something I should truly be afraid of or concerned about, then that's something we'll think about.
Yeah, like I have no problems having discussions with people when they're emotional. But when you start ranting and yelling and like, which I understand is all part of being emotional, but this is where I kind of unplug a little bit and I'm just like, I want to continue this conversation, but we need to be conversing at a level where we're not yelling and we're speaking intellectually. If you get into a situation where it's your pure emotion, which there's nothing wrong with, but it doesn't have the proper platform to really to get its information that it wants to get across to you. So that's how I kind of, as you've alluded to, that's how I kind of talk to Junior about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like it gets to be a snowball fight, right? You're talking at each other, you're throwing things at each other, and nobody's going to get permanently damaged, but you're not going to make much progress either.
I just hope to God it's not a snowball situation that it's like from the movie Elf, where he's just producing snowballs like crazy and you can't compete, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be in that snowball fight. Let me just
No,
tell you.
that was a loaded fight.
And if people don't know what I'm talking about, Will Ferrell's movie Elf, unless you've been living somewhere and haven't seen a classic Christmas film, be sure to watch it. And then get back to me and tell me about that snowball fight.
No, you're exactly right. But the TED Talk, it was a great thing for me to do. And if you get a chance to watch it, it's on YouTube there. It's I can give you a link to that. But it's about 13 minutes of my life, which when I was on stage went on for 4 days and 13 minutes. And it was something that so the next one I'll do some things differently that I wasn't trying. Here's where trying to be somebody else. I was watching other people's, well, you should have no slides. We should have, just a couple saying, and I use slides. Mine have very few words, or if they're a word, they're a quote or a definition of a word or something like that. But they're not really meant to construe content. They're meant to back up what the story is. They're again, some of the background or the filler within. Oftentimes they're pictures. But in me, as I'm telling this story, these pictures are like waypoints. Or, it's like there's a left turn here, and I need to go talk about this now. But I didn't do that, so now I'm having to do a couple type things. Is one, I'm having to quote science, of which. So when I advise people to talk about things that the stories that you tell should be stories that you've lived or you've heard them enough that you can do it in your sleep. And that part of the TED Talk, I can tell when it happened because I know myself, but it's towards the second half when I start telling about the inner bully, because then I've lived that. I've had this. Up until then, there's mixtures of science and different facts that were important to the overall talk, but I hadn't lived it. And those were the things where I struggled a little bit more. And I couldn't, and making the connections of those things, because I haven't lived it with simply facts, was difficult for me. So I'd have to find another vehicle to do that. So I did, again, any experience that you don't die is a learning experience. I didn't die. I actually use that line in the TED Talk, as I'm talking about the inner bully and I'm talking to the audience. I said, look, there's some of you right there. I'd say most of you out there, except for the guy in the back row with his arms crossed, wouldn't trade places with me today. You don't think you can do it. You can't talk. Your brain's telling you things like you can't talk to strange people. And I start calling them out. And I say, you're lying. If you can't talk to people, how'd you make any friends? If you can't talk to people you don't know. Right. So getting up to sort of dispel the, again, put it as you like to frame it, when you've got something productive to say about it, let's talk about it. And that's just, it will help, as the whole goal when I go to speak to somebody is if I can impact one person, just change one person's view or life or make their life better, then I've accomplished my goal. And as got off stage of the TED Talk, I wasn't feeling particularly good about it. I mean, I'm sure you've had these things where, you
Oh
could have
yeah.
done, where in your mind it was perfect, where all the warts were that came out because, you were viewing it from the inside. And this guy had his young man, and he had notes, and he drew the picture of the slide I had, and he said, "Look, I can you clarify this one statement that you made on that?" And so okay. Look, this was so worth it because this one person, and there was probably more, but this one person that came up, I knew that I'd impacted his life somehow. So, that made it all worth it.
I have had a similar situation. There was a conference that I was in where I was the keynote speaker, and at the very last minute, I don't know, now I talk about living dangerously, but at the very last minute, based on the temperature and what had been going on during the course of the morning, I scrapped what I was going to talk about, and I changed it 30 minutes before the talk. And I got up there and did my talk, and I'm thinking to myself, well, Louise happened to be there, and she thought I was insane. She's like, you've been practicing for 2 weeks, and now you were deciding 30 minutes before you get on stage, you're like, yeah, I'm out of here. This is no good. I'm gone. No, like, it's just like, it was ridiculous, right? Like, I don't know what I clearly did not understand what I was doing, but someone told me that, no, I had to change something up. I don't think I would have been, even though the story was real and true, there was something that authentic about it that was just going to be missing, that piece. So anyways, I do it, I get off the stage, and next thing you know, they're like, oh, you've got 15 minutes before blah, 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 the next thing starts. I'm on stage and I'm thinking to myself, well, that was a gong show. What a stupid, Junior's like, you idiot. You've ruined your reputation. No one's going to want you to speak again. Blah, blah, blah. All this, your coaching career, out the door, all this kind of stuff. And next thing you know, I'm being mobbed by people. And people are like, I was crying. I've never had someone talk to me that got me so much in the heart. I like, and you hear all these things, and then people are like, you just changed my life. And you're just like, wow, okay. So to your point, I
think that was the universe coming back to you, talking to you, that this is not going to hit the mark, Jay. You need to go in and hear, and the story that you told, you took in input of something that, and that's what I like to do before I go give a talk, is I like to go out and talk to the audience, pay attention to the news, get sort of a local feel for the audience, the environment, the what's going on, because you want to make it, if you're touching something that everybody's experiencing or is very familiar with to start the story or to go on, you're going to have much better luck than if it's some esoteric thing that nobody's had any discussion with. That's why, the story of my TED Talk, everybody's talked to that person. Everybody's talked to the Simon or Junior. So I set that frame of reference, and that's where if you start there, if you start your stories where your audience is, then you earn the right to sort of bring them along on your journey, as opposed to yelling at them across the street, hey, come over here, I got a good story to tell you. I'm not going to do that.
Well, it's true, right? And I think we almost do this in every type of business, right? You could think of books, for example. Like, everyone has a story to tell, and a lot of the stories, there are some similarities. So what are you going to do to get one's attention? Color of the book. I'm using books as an example. The lettering, the size of it, right? The thickness of the book, and all these things. Like, you have to do something to stand out. And to your point, to circle back when you originally said to this woman that was doing something and not being herself, and we're getting back to what you said about being real is about being you. For me, that's what you need to be, as long as you're being true to yourself. So when you said that, it totally connected with me, Doug. Like, I was like, I'm drinking that Kool-Aid. Well, in this case, anyone who's listening, I'm holding up a mug right now. It's a Superman mug. All my boys say I'm super dad. So hence the Superman thing. Anyways, I'm drinking what you're saying. I'm 100% agreeing with you. Be who you are. Be true to that. And if you are, it will never steer you wrong. And in your case, excuse the expression, but kick ass TED Talk. By the way, I've watched it, and I know you mentioned it. The link will be in the show notes. So I think everyone has 13 minutes in their lives to sit down and have it changed. So there's the spiel. Watch Doug's talk, and you will have a profound effect on you. Period. And a conversation. No problem. But on the heels of all this greatness about you, Doug, and on your TED Talk, things have spilled into certain other avenues. And I would like you to talk about that, my friend, and what these new ventures did you have down the pipeline coming?
Yeah, so thanks for that. There's a couple of things going on. One of them, and well, we'll do a spoiler alert. You'll be coming up in an episode in a couple of months. Here is I have a podcast, Tech Story podcast, and it's sort of a vehicle for me. I've been in technical sales, as I mentioned earlier, my entire career, and as technology, it's business to business typically sales, but as technology evolves at an ever increasing pace, the complexity and the other pieces of that, it gets to be really hard to sort of, how do you explain the value or what's going on to that? But even when it was not, I'll go back to the Windows 95 days where you had a new version of Windows every 5 years and you're 3 years and you're happy about it, right? So you did things were on a project basis. So now it's truly about, what is it going to do for me? And at the end of the day, technology outside personal stuff, and even personal, it needs to have a function in life. I look at, do I need the latest iPhone that has this? No, because I don't use 90% of the features I have on my, my older one. If I can shut the alarm off in the morning, I'm happy. But, it's how do I, when I'm talking to people, and now more importantly, IT no longer is the sort of controller of who gets technologies. Back in the day when IT sort of, they bought technology, and they gave it to you to use. And they said, this is what you're going to use it for. This is what you're going to need. We control it. We live in this castle, and here's the moat, right? And we protect everything, and we do this, and you're going to do what we say. That's different because they controlled the budget. But now marketing has a technology budget. All these different, finance has a technology budget, and they're making the decisions. And if you're a progressive IT leader, you need to realize that, if you're still trying to protect and control everything, and that your career dissipation light should be going off, because there are, with all these cloud services and stuff around, there's other ways to get the technology that they need to solve problems. But I had to develop a language to talk to these other people now that are making the buying decisions, like the marketing manager or the chief customer officer. There's new names that come up all the time because they have different needs, right? And so as you're trying to, sell technology, you need to fulfill a need. First one, start the story with where they are. What are their current pains? I know that's sort of an overused term, but what are they needing? What are they missing? Do they need, like if we're trying to grow customer satisfaction, okay, what are the metrics that you're trying to use to measure and that you're not meeting? And then, okay. Yeah, I think we can solve that problem for you and make it better. And then I tell the story about technology, not necessarily the ones and zeros of it. This is a high level type concept of, if we could put these things in place and you could do it here, that would address your problems. And not only that, then it sets you up for, as you evolve, things are a lot easier to tweak and change. It's like sailing. You pick a point where you want to go to, like a sailing race. And then along the way, the wind has a say, market changes, COVID, whatever. But you can adapt and do those changes along the way, and it gives them a path forward. So it's not obsolete. We're not locked in this box. So that I had to learn, again, this is part of the storytelling, and there's an art form to technical storytelling, because it's too easy. Too many people I see today do tech explaining, where you get in and it's like mansplaining.
Yeah.
Louis will know what the mansplaining piece is, I'm sure.
Yep. Yeah.
But put the technology spin on it. And I'm, if I'm a business owner, I don't care. Here's the problem I need. And you get this disconnect. And so there's it's harder. So it's not some people I've talked to say, well, that's just sort of, you're manipulating people. Says, no, I'm talking in their language, trying to solve their problem. And if you don't learn how to tell a technical story, if you don't learn storytelling as a vehicle to convey, to make that connection between business needs and business value and technology, you're not going to be very successful. And
I
so, yeah,
I 100% agree with you. And to your point, I more look at it as this. It really comes down to this one thing that we say a lot is know your audience,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, it doesn't matter whether you are an executive, whether you are a school teacher, a salesperson, whatever it is. The point is we are conversing. We're using language. You need to understand your audience so that you can get your message across. I mean, of course, an elementary teacher is talking about history so their elementary students can understand. She wouldn't have the exact same conversation with a bunch of adults. Okay, wait, she might for them. But anyways, that's it. But you get the point, right? And so for you talking with the tech people, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and this is something I developed and sort of evolved over my years unconsciously. It's just, I found this way that it works, and I think in story. So as I'm looking at things, how can I make a story out of this, or what's the story to have? And so the Tech Story podcast is sort of designed to talk to great storytellers, because there's things that you can use from a great storyteller that may not have anything to do with technology, because the principle is the same. Here's the character, here's these other, but the vehicles that you can use and the tools that you can use in the storytelling are very, you can repurpose it to tell the technical story that you need to. So the goal of that is to interview people and have fun. I just dropped an episode yesterday where I was actually ranting. Sometimes I get into a little rant. Somebody had asked me to endorse them on LinkedIn. I'd connected with them 35 seconds ago.
Oh my gosh.
You really don't want that right now, because the endorsement's not going to look real good.
No.
There's a story in everything. If you look at it, I try to come up, my Mindset Monday stuff is a lot like yours, where I'm trying to figure out a mindset. And, apparently people think I'm a home builder or home improvement, because I did a lot of stories about stuff I was doing in my backyard, because we all have lives. And again, that's trying me to be relatable to and put people in a frame of mind from experiences that they may have had, or maybe having today, or they know somebody that had that. So trying to get in that frame of reference, so that hopefully they will listen to the message, and then it will sort of land with them, and they can take action on it. So the Tech Story podcast is sort of my vehicle to go ahead and do that. It's very much in its infancy, and I'm sure there'll be, I was talking to somebody, and I'm going to actually interview some CEOs and some tech leaders and ask them, we'll deconstruct their marketing messages and their story. Like Elon Musk is a great tech storyteller. Steve Jobs was probably the best of all time at doing that and getting a very technical message across in a way that you didn't really know you were getting a technical message. Nobody knew they needed an iPhone till he sort of showed them and went on and did that.
Well, yeah.
Right. So that's the tools I want to give people, because there's a lot of brilliant people. I mentor some master's students at university here, University of Texas, and they're data scientists, they're MSIT management, they're business analytics. I mean, I looked at their resume the first time they asked me to go speak to them, and I'm like, I can't teach them anything. I have to look up every third word, because I don't really know what it is. But I've heard them talk, and when you talk, they're talking amongst themselves. They're very comfortable, but it's a totally different language that I would have trouble understanding. So I try to coach them on how to think and again, tell these technical stories. How are you going to do this? Because it sounds cheap, but everything, when you're in the world to tell a story, to convince something, coaching, whatever, it comes down to some form of sales. Dan Pink wrote a book, To Sell Is Human. And it's very true. Even if you're simply say you're on an engineering team and you have an idea that you want the team to sort of adopt, you have to sell them on that idea. And so it needs to be a story. In that case, there would be, here's our day-to-day stuff that we're doing with engineering, or we're having this problem or something. what if we did this that would then enable this and this and this, right? So you're selling them on that idea, but you need to do it in a story form and use that format.
I 100% agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can learn things in bullet point and just have all the main things, and you can memorize that. But I dare to have a conversation with someone out there who were given bullet point information and told to memorize that, and then I turn around and tell a story about everything that's in those bullet points, but I tell you a real telling story about it. You'll remember my story more than you'll remember those bullet points. And
Yeah.
there was a time, probably starting in the 60s, in business where everything was bullet point.
Mhm.
And the world has changed, people. Things have changed, and storytelling is so important. And if you're a business out there, and if you aren't telling a story, you are going to get left behind. Like,
Yeah.
this train is leaving the station, and you'll be sprinting to grab the caboose on the back to get on board, because it's leaving the station. And it's
Yeah.
sad to see so many people really struggling to understand that.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, I remember the early days were right. I was the keeper. You didn't have the internet, or it wasn't nearly as pervasive. Nobody did the marketing, the research and stuff. So the knowledge was in the hands of a very few people about what a product could do. And so the bullet point thing, when you left a meeting, you took bullet points because that's what that's probably the least common denominator that you could remember, that here, it met these specs that we needed to do, then you could go do that, right? But because I was the keeper of the information. But now when you go talk to a customer, chances are they know more about the product than you do from a technical feature perspective. They've got that covered because you publish the specs, you publish, all the background, all the white papers, and chances are they know more from a technical standpoint that you do. I'm there to bridge that gap of, okay, here's how this is going to solve your business need. And that's, again, this, to your point, I cover similar to that at the very opening of my TED Talk. I talk about facts versus a story. It goes on to your point, the bullet points, nobody's going to remember the context of those bullet points, but they can remember as you're taking them on this journey through the story, you're drawing this sort of arc around it. So here's the plan. So we've made the full circle, not simply, it gets to be, sometimes it's like an IKEA instruction page. You got how the hell do you get this in here? I don't understand.
I don't speak this, and the drawings don't even match up with what they're showing you. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand. I know for me personally, I use analogies on everything. And I swear Louise has told me I'll be in my 70s and I'll be speaking only in analogies. And I'm sure my grandkids will have a hoot and say, well, there's granddad, crazy granddad, always talking in crazy analogies all the time. But anyways, this is besides the point. It'll make life interesting. But on the heels of storytelling, I have a quick question, because I love reading. I think reading is super important. And the way books have been written, I believe, is changing dramatically. And some people don't see the change, but I personally do. We've gone from an era of how to do to more of, this is my life journey. And during this journey, this is how I learned how to do. And I think those books are more prominent now. So my question to you, Doug, is what is beside your bedside table? What's sitting in your office on the shelf that when you pull it down, I'm just going to grab this book that's on this desk. Anyway, here I'm giving a shameless plug to my favorite baseball team. Cubs way, the zen of building the best team in baseball and breaking the curse. But I mean,
hang on. Go get mine. Hold on.
Oh, okay. This is live radio, and Doug's grabbing a book. For all you out there, that's the dramatic pause. And while he's grabbing that book, I just want to quickly say, yes, this is a baseball book. Yes, this is a baseball book.
Anyway,
but
back.
Okay, you're back. But I was just telling the audience that yes, this is a baseball book, but there is so much real life in this that you can take away and apply to business and your own personal life. So.
Oh yeah. Well, before COVID and everything else and all these things that are going on, sports used to have a much more better stories of it. That But to your point, here's one of the books.
Okay.
And maybe you want this one, Talk Like Ted, but it's a storyteller's secret. There's another one, the Steve Jobs, how he did things on that. So they're much like you're saying, is they're filling in the lines. Here's the secrets. Here's the other things. That's not a fact and figure. It's not something you can go to your point, and everything's YouTube, right? Here's the how-to. I can go look on YouTube and go fix a thermonuclear reactor now. I'm pretty sure of that. But
Please don't. For all those people that, please don't look up YouTube how to fix a nuclear power plant or something. Please don't.
I think DHS may be coming to my house now because they listen to that. But so this is, like you said, so the how-to books are the bullet points, if you go back to that analogy. And the things like this that sort of they tell you their story that's around that. And that's sort of the filling in, like you said, that's the story piece of that. And the key to those is I try to get them from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different styles. And the lesson I learned, this gets back to being yourself, is I don't try to be exactly who they are. I will not be exactly like Steve Jobs that's on there, but there's some things that he did that if I put my own spin on it, that truly is me, that will help me be better. And, it's sort of like as you're training in your sport, you're trying to do little things that your limitations of your body give you. So I can't swim maybe like Michael Phelps or something like that, but there are certain things that he does that will make me better based on what I am, but I'll never be him and I won't try to be him.
Unless your goal is to win 50 gold medals or something crazy in the Olympics.
I can't diet that long to go do that. I've got the hit. I've got this. Okay, I got the aerodynamic.
Oh my God. But and if there is someone out there listening and they want to be the next Michael Phelps, let me tweak what that thought process is. Don't be the next Michael Phelps. Be you. And if you accomplish more than that gentleman, congratulations. But don't be him, or don't be the next, if you're an inspiring female soccer player and you want to be Mia Hamm, just be you. And if you exceed past that person, congratulations. Every record's been meant to be broken. So we set the bar a certain way and we all try to surpass it at some point if you have that desire and need within you.
Yeah, it's sort of like you said, tossing out to the universe in the swimming type thing. I want to be better than Michael Phelps. Okay? At that point in time, then you're striving for something. You're not limiting yourself. Theoretically, you could come and you could stop at that. But, you want, let's be better. It's not being egotistical it's either. You're setting your goals, again, putting out in the universe, you're setting your goals high, which then tunes everything else into how do I then go meet that? If you're going inside and am I taking a step towards being better than that? What have I done today that has done that? When I take a job, does it help me get along to the path where I'm going? Does it fill my passion? And when you're doing those things, that gives you the best chance for success.
I 100% agree. I actually love that. Is for you to, it's so positive, right? Like I always tell people, flip the script, just flip it upside down. And because people see things one way, and I'm not saying it's wrong what they're seeing, but that is not the only thing that's there. If you literally take your scope and widen it a little bit and maybe tilt your head and look at it slightly different, you'll be surprised what you're going to see. And I just love the positive spin that you put on that, because whatever you're putting out there, that's what you're going to get back. And we hear that all the time. And that's one thing I love about what you do on LinkedIn, Doug. And for those people who haven't checked out Doug on LinkedIn, please, after you've done the TED Talk and you spent 13 minutes, you've already penciled in 30 minutes to check out this guy. Yes, sure. You'll see his website, but go spend some time and check out his posts, because it's humor, it's positivity, it's learning, it's all these things. And I think this is what makes people worthwhile getting to know. and you embrace all that. And I really admire what you do, like your mindset on Mondays, setting people up for success, even though they all think you're a carpenter. You know, and then it's like and then you have your fanatical Fridays where you basically say, hey, people, we are a global community. There are people out on this planet that are doing things that you have to figure out what they're doing. And you showcase these people, which is great. And which I'm telling you right now, Doug, based on what you've done, has led for other people to connect, collaborate, and do some amazing things. And that, I mean, oh my God, I could just go on, but this is not about me talking about you, which is a great thing to do. I want you to talk about you and like, where did all this positive spin come from? Like, did you just wake up 5 years old and all of a sudden I'm going to be Mr. Thompson, Mr. Positivity? Like, where did this all come from?
No, well, it's interesting. And Mr. Fantastic Four. I mean, you do your own sort of building up of that network too. So I'll take your compliment as high praise. But I'll distill this down to, and it comes from gratitude. So the positivity and stuff starts with gratitude, and I'll take it back to an event I was a senior in high school or just graduated high school. I lived in East Texas. So if you ever watched, it was a country and western song where they're out in the Chattahoochee River or something. That's much like the area that I grew up with.
Okay, I have that now. That song in my head, the Chattahoochee. Anyways, that song. Yeah. So thanks, Doug. I got that worm in my head now.
Your worm of the day.
Yeah, thanks.
So anyway, I grew up there, and we were supposed to go water skiing. This was during the summer, so I went up to a friends of mine house. They had a boat. They were twins actually. And I went up to the point, the time we said to greet, and they're gone. And I'm like, what's going on? What did I miss? And so I go knock on the door, and their mother's there, answers the door. And I asked, they were supposed to go on. And she did me the biggest favor, I think, in my entire life. And it took a lot of guts for her to do, is that she told me, look, they're tired of you bragging about all the stuff that you have and all these things that you can do. And this, they just, your lack of humility, they just, they're tired of it, and they just went without you. And I sit back and I said, wow, because I had not, that wasn't my nature. I didn't think I was coming across that way, but it's one of those things that sort of slaps her across the face that said, I'm not grateful enough for what I do have, and I don't show gratitude, and I don't do this. And I've showed it to her. I went and thanked her many years later, and it's something I still remember, and it keeps me humble, but it reminds me to be grateful that there's people in my life that have done that. And then just, I look around at my grandchildren and everything else that I should be grateful for. And when you come from that place, and it's more about what you can do for others as opposed to what you can't do that if you're in a negative mindset, right? And that's the whole thing. If your platform is being grateful and approaching, you have to be positive, and you have to have that positivity around it to fully manifest the gratitude that you have for other people. And I think that's where it's grown. And as I've become more aware of it, the power of being positive. But I've always looked at, try to keep the long game in mind and not worry about the immediate setbacks. But one thing I want the audience to know is, I talk about these things, Simon, and the gratitude, and yet just this last week, I had some setbacks of some stuff, and it was hard to do this. And I found Simon getting the upper hand in some of these things, and I had to fight back. And so just know that it's not a set, you don't solve this problem all the time. We still struggle with this.
And I think that's the whole thing, right? Like, just because you fell down once doesn't mean you're not going to fall down again. And life is hard. I know we've heard that expression all the time. My boys are like, oh, this is difficult. I did it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. If you woke up one morning, you thought life was easy, I don't know where you got that, or I don't know where that expression came from, or where people, because it's not. I know for myself, and I've actually gone to, this is crazy, and I'll just make this very short, is that on the lines of what you said about being grateful, I think I lived my whole life letting Junior have the talking stick. He did a lot of talking, and I just kind of let him do his thing, and I didn't really ignore it, but I let him have the mic quite a bit sometimes. And then when I was diagnosed and basically told when my end date is, and everybody goes, "Oh my gosh, like that's what a horrific news to find out that you've got a blood disorder. There's no cure. You're dying. There's nothing they can do about it. It's going to shorten your your lifespan." And I actually went back a year later and I thanked the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I look at the world in a totally, totally different way. And it's being grateful. Okay. I'm looking at the time right now, and I totally feel like Louise. She's like, "Oh my God, where the heck did all this time go?" Seriously, Doug, I could sit with you for hours. I mean, I love it. I'm going to follow suit what Louise does a lot of the time, and she does, I guess, like rapid fire questions, all right, on her show. So to hold true to the Louise H. Reed show, I would like to rapid fire some questions at you.
Okay, well, I'm from Texas, so the answer is going to be slow.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll try to get in as many as we can then, okay? Within 5 minutes.
All right.
All right. What advice would you give to your 13-year-old self? And then what advice would you give to your 33-year-old self? So you've got teen and then almost midlife.
Yeah, my 13-year-old self, I would tell him that you've got 3 more years left with your dad to enjoy them more and spend more time soaking that in. And for the 33-year-old self, be more true to yourself and get out there and do things. Don't try to please other people. Because that was something I learned after that. That is really, I wish I'd have done that earlier.
That's great. Considering the world climate right now, I think this question is really appropriate. What do you think the world needs more of right now?
It needs more people listening, not talking at, listening, seeking to understand, as Stephen Covey would put it.
I say, listen without prejudice, right? It's just, it's hard, but I really love that. And I know we did talk about it briefly, but give me your go-to for podcasts and books.
I love Seth Godin because he's just got such an out there mindset of topical type things, marketing, and he explains some of the underlying things. And he was in tech for a while. Yep. So I love Seth Godin. I love Mike Rowe because he's one of the best storytellers that I've seen. And he does things the way I heard it. And he tells historical lessons sort of in reverse. So you learn about what the character did before you sort of learn who the character is. Okay. So that helped the prejudice piece that, I know about Abraham Lincoln. Well, maybe you don't. Yeah. So it does teach you those things. And books, the one that I keep going back to is Tim Ferriss' Tribe of Mentors. Okay. Because in that he interviewed so many great people of which you can pull some great quotes out of. And it is always great to go back and sort of, it's like you're talking to 1,000 people, getting one little snippet of advice, much like a rapid fire question. So I go to that a lot.
That's awesome, man. All right, now I have to say goodbye. If I had a box of tissues, I would, and I'm not exaggerating. This has been freaking awesome. So I do want to say that it was nice taking the car out for a spin, the Louise H. Reed car out for a spin. And what better guest to have than Doug Thompson? This was amazing. I have to thank Contact Radio for letting us get out of the driveway and take this car for a spin. Cameron, I appreciate you letting us leave the compound and as I keep you referring to a spin, we got to drive. And I'd like to thank everyone out there who tuned in today. And please, please, please take the time to listen to Doug's TED Talk. You will be grateful that you did. Until next week, you will all be able to hear Louise once again, and I will be back in the back seat, minding my own business. But I want to thank everyone again. Until next Tuesday, keep it real, be brave, be bold, and be happy, everyone. Take care. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.